Hello everyone and welcome back to another Stradigoy video. Today we're doing an entire video on an atypical tournament list for the Lumineth Realm Lords. This list was run by Laurie Hugget-Wilde at the Age of Sigmar match play event in the UK and he came in second with it. So congratulations Laurie, and I do hope I do your list justice in this review. I'm looking forward to reviewing this specific list because it highlights a nation I haven't been overly enthusiastic about, and because it's very different from the Lumineth lists we've seen in the past. Let's dive in. First, we'll look at the concept, what the goals could be, what pieces we'll need to achieve those goals, and so on. Then we'll talk about the key abilities connected to this specific list, after which we'll look at the list itself. This is where most of the tactics will be discussed. We'll conclude our video with the strengths and weaknesses of the reviewed list. Now, Laurie obviously built this list as a tournament list. This means it needs to be an all-rounder list, yet not be too overly complicated, as to keep up the pace. For this specific list, I imagine Laurie wanted to go all in on a playstyle that hasn't been typical for most Lumineth lists. This list is a fast and aggressive build that will catch people off guard. I'm sure it has been constructed this way due to the current meta. We've been seeing a lot of shooting for a while now, but there's also a lot of fast and hard-hitting pieces in the game. Think of Kragnos, Vampire Lords on Zombie Dragons, Maw Crushers or Stonehorns. When you're fighting either of these kinds of lists, you need to either reduce their ranged impact or have enough damage to delete big pieces in one turn. You also want to claim as much of the board space as possible against fast and aggressive lists, so you can control the battlefield. That's why Laurie has chosen Alumnia for his great nation and has no less than 60 Wardens in his list. And no Sentinels. Yep, you heard it right, 60 Wardens without any archers. This might seem like a strange call, but keep in mind that Wardens have the same kind of damage as Sentinels do, but double the amount of attacks. So if you can find a way to cover the distance between your Wardens and their target, they will kill that target twice as reliably as Sentinels would, and for less points. Before reviewing the actual list though, I want to make sure we're all caught up on the key abilities that are connected to this list. So we'll have a quick look at the most important rules and abilities first. As far as the allegiance abilities go, for the Lumineth Realm Lords there's only 3 that will come up when you're piloting a list like this. First is the Aether Quartz reserves. Every Lumineth unit has one. You can use one of your reserves once per game, and only one unit can do so in each phase. When a unit uses their Aether Quartz, their abilities are enhanced and you can choose what benefit they receive. You can either increase their save or hit rolls by 1, or you could reroll a casting roll. If you use the Aether Quartz at the start of your hero phase, you can even choose to cast one more spell than you normally could. Their second ability is called Lightning Reactions, and it allows a Lumineth player to fight with 2 units in a row per activation. This is immensely impactful for this list, since we'll be doing most damage in melee. Lastly, let's talk about the Shining Company again. Shining Company is a sub-allegiance ability that all Venari units have. While each model is touching 2 other bases in the same unit, enemies suffer a -1 to hit penalty when targeting that unit. However, that unit cannot run nor charge while in this formation, and they can only pile in 1 inch. Normally Lumineth players will benefit massively from this ability, but due to the aggressive nature of this list, you won't be using this formation on all of your units at all times. As for the great nation of Alumnia, there's only 3 things we want to highlight. The first benefit you get from being part of Alumnia is being able to make a pre-game move with 3 of your Venari or Cenari units. You make this move after setting up, which is important for alpha striking with your Wardens. The command ability adds even more speed and aggression, as it allows a unit to charge even if it has ran before. Do note that you use this command ability in the charge phase, so you won't be able to reroll your charges for that unit, which does make it a little bit more difficult to use. Lastly, the Waystone artifact is a once per battle teleport to get your heroes out of trouble or on an objective, as you can redeploy them within 13 inches of their original spot, and they only need to be 3 inches away from enemy units. Believe it or not, in this list there's only 4 different war scrolls, and only 2 are really worth mentioning. The list runs Teclis and Selenar, who are an incredible tech piece. Teclis knows 22 spells and, maybe even more importantly, can auto-cast up to 4 of them and auto-unbind 1. Wardens are the most important war scroll in this list, however, as Laurie has chosen to include 60 of them. They're incredible, as they can be quite fast and sturdy with the right spells and have amazing damage output through mortal wounds. We made an entire guide on how to play Teclis and the Wardens, by the way, so if you want to learn more detailed tactics on either of these units, make sure to watch those videos afterwards. Alright, and now for the big reveal, here's Laurie's list. I'll go over the entire list first, and then we'll discuss tactics. As stated before, Laurie has chosen Alumnia as his Great Nation and Prize Sorcery as his Grand Strategy. Both picks are easy to understand when you look at the units in his list. He chose Indomitable as his Triumph, which also has its reasons. We'll get into that later. As for units, he's running Teclis in his list, and atypically, Teclis is the general here. He also brought a Cenari Calligrave as the obligatory second hero. He then runs 3 units of Wardens, 1 big block of 30, 1 medium block of 20, and then a small unit of only 10 Wardens. He also added a unit of Dawn Riders. When you're running Teclis and this much infantry, you really want to bring some endless spells to back them up. Laurie chose the Endless Life Swarm and Umbral Spell Portal. He's put all of that into a battle regiment for a 1-drop of 1995 points. Okay, so when I said this was not the typical LUMINETH list, you can see I was not overstating it. This list plays completely differently from what you might be used to, and is definitely very different from the list we've seen before that did well in a tournament setting. So how does this list work exactly, and why does it work? Well, it all stands and falls with the nation, to be honest. You could run this in a different nation, of course, but you will never be able to achieve the same results. Laurie went for a highly aggressive Alpha Strike list, but rather than paying a premium price for squishy sentinels, he went for sturdier Wardens that deal more damage. Imagine deploying this army. You leave the Calligrave in a shrine for as long as he's safe. Then you put a big block of Wardens out in front, with Teclis and the 2 small units close by. You then pre-game move 3 of those units. Most of the time, you're moving up your damage dealers, so that's the 2 biggest units of Wardens. Then I imagine he'll be moving his Dawn Riders on a flank to screen out enemy threats and teleport things around with Teclis. Now, where the magic really happens is how fast those Wardens can get into combat. Let's look at an example. You can move them up 6 inches before turn 1. Then, with Speed of Hish, they're moving 12 inches on their own. Before you do that, have your Calligrave spend his free Shrine command to auto-run one of your units 6 inches. This way, you'll have moved 24 inches before charging. With the Alumnia command, you can have that unit that ran 6 inches still charge and spend another CP to reroll charges with your other Warden unit if you need to. Can you imagine what your opponent has to deal with when 50 Wardens are hitting his lines with mortal wounds on 5 and a 5+ ward? That's backbreaking. While your Wardens are dealing with one flank, you can zone out threats from the other side with your screen of Dawn Riders. With their 14-inch movement, they have insane flexibility when it comes to screening and when it's used in tandem with a pre-game move. And then we haven't even talked about all the possibilities you have with a teleport from Transporting Vortex. You obviously can move after being teleported, but you can still throw down a massive block of Wardens somewhere on the map. While your 30 wardens are dealing with their front line, for example, you might be able to squeeze in 20 in their back line. Now, all of this gets even better when your opponent tries to avoid the alpha strike. They might deploy with their backs against the wall. In that case, it could be better to give them the first turn. Unless they've got massive range damage, they will still have to come to you. You could then possibly get the double turn for an absolutely horrific amount of damage in back-to-back melee phases. So that's the impact of Alumnia, and I really love that nation here. I still don't think it works well for most Lumineth builds, but for this one it's absolutely genius. Alright, onto the grand strategy. Obviously you're picking prize sorcery here, since they'll basically have to table you to prohibit you from achieving your grand strategy. With this many wardens running around and you using all your command points on a charge, Indomitable is a great triumph to have at your disposal. Not having to take battle shock tests on one of those big blocks of wardens can be life-saving. And when we're talking about saving lives, we'll mostly be looking at Teclis for that role. His protection of Teclis aura of 18 inches is a game changer and will keep your wardens alive even when they're in the thick of it. Laurie has also included a spell portal for Teclis here. In classic Lumineth builds, you'd use this portal to throw out a Lambent Light spell, but here you're focusing on the Storm of Searing White Light mainly for that sweet mortal wound output. Also, don't forget about Howling Gale, which prohibits a unit from issuing or receiving a command ability until your next hero phase. Bye Unleash Hell or All Out Defense, and hello Brutal Slaughter. All in all, Teclis is just a great flexible pick here. He's a monster for easy battle tactics, can dish out quite a lot of mortal wounds, and has so many spells that theoretically you will have a solution for any problem. Since Teclis will do most of the heavy spell lifting, the Calligrave can chill out in his shrine, or a bit behind your lines, simply casting Total Eclipse or holding objectives. Keep in mind that he can make a small scale teleport with that artifact to grab an objective or battle tactic. Just to be clear, Laurie's not picked the Calligrave here because it's a useful hero, but because it's the only second hero he could fit into his list. I'm sure if he had more points left over, Laurie would have loved taking a Lord Regent, which could do wonders in this list. You could then go on and use a shrine as a blocking terrain piece to secure your flank. If you want to go that route though, you'd have to drop an endless spell, and they're both quite crucial in this list. We've already discussed at length what the Wardens are here for, but I'd still like to point out some details. Note how they're all rocking Speed of Hish. You might wonder why you'd ever do that, but keep in mind that without a Lord Regent, these Wardens will usually be casting their own Power of Hish anyway. The only reason Laurie is running Speed of Hish on all of them is for redundancy, because this spell is crucial to this list functioning well. You need it to get into an easy charge range, but also to reposition yourself mid or end game, where a 6-inch move won't be enough to secure all your important objectives. He's also opted to run 3 units of Wardens with shrinking sizes, rather than 2 blocks of 30. In the current meta, that's a tech choice more than anything else. Rather than just killing, you need units that can screen or that can hold objectives. If you're running 2 big units of 30 and you need them both in combat, you've got nothing to protect your backfield. So that's why he split the Wardens into 3 units. The 1 Dawnrider unit is there for the exact same reason. They're an excellent screen and they're faster than Wardens, so they are less dependent on spells. Lastly, he's got the Emerald Lifeswarm, which you see in almost all Lumineth lists these days. It's just such a valuable spell in this army. A single Warden model is worth 14.5 points. If you're bringing back 2d3 in a turn the Lifeswarm is summoned, the spell could be paying for itself in that hero phase alone. Laurie's put all of that in a battle regiment, which is also a classic pick for Lumineth and a lot of other armies. It's just so good when you get to decide who goes first and second. Having some power over alpha strikes and the double turn can be game defining. And with that, we've covered everything there's to say about this list. So let's conclude what we can take away from it. When you're running a competitive Lumineth list without sentinels, you need to get your damage from elsewhere, as nothing else except for Wardens has a reliable burst damage in our book. No sentinels also means a vastly different playstyle. Using Alumnia for this and playing aggressively will most definitely have caught some of Laurie's opponents off guard. When you're running 60 Wardens, you're dealing massive amounts of damage that your opponent can't ignore. You will have to dedicate immense resources to kill your Wardens while they're backed up by a 5+ ward and a live swarm. While your opponent's busy doing that, you're free to claim the board. Both of these things are so different from the typical Lumineth Castle playstyle that I'm really interested in Laurie's views on this list as well. So Laurie, if you're listening, I'd love for you to get in touch, so we might have a chat about your list and your way of thinking. I can also recommend AOS Coach's video on Lumineth with Jordan Duncan, as he discussed a similar type of list. And so we've come to the end of this guide. I hope you've enjoyed this tactical list review. We'll be posting more content like this in the future, next to our usual strategy guides on Lumineth and different Age of Sigmar armies. So if you did enjoy it, please leave a like and a comment, so the YouTube algorithm will spread the love even further. Speaking about love, I'd also specifically like to thank you and my other subscribers. We've seen a steady growth of subscribers over the past few weeks, and you've all been so extremely supportive and positive. It really keeps me going, and it also lets me dream about bigger things. For example, at some point, I'd love to do some battle reports and maybe interview some of you guys, just to hear your perspective on the Lumineth or other armies. So thank you so very much. I'm honestly grateful for all of you, and I look forward to replying to your comments. So I hope to meet you there or in the next video. Cheers.